What we're going to do on this one, we're going to complete the square to solve, right? So we're going to solve still by completing the square, right? CTS stands for complete square. But this one's going to be tricky because you can't take half of 7, but it's a fraction. Decimals are bad. You don't want to use decimals. You're going to get yourself all confused. And yeah, it's going to be really ugly. In fact, remember I told you that completing the square is where the quadratic formula comes from. And so you're going to see exactly how soon. But I want to show you with this one right here. This is our first one where we're going to have a fraction. So, all right. So here's what I do. This is how I do it. There's lots and lots of ways to do it. I go ahead and I move the C term, right? Because this is C. So I move C to the other side first. But when I do that, I leave space, right? Now, let's see here. You got to take half of b and square it, right? Half of b and square it. To make this a perfect square, c will be half of b squared. But if I add it to one side, I got to add to the other. So half of b squared added to both sides. So b is 7, so now watch how I write this. Half of b squared. Do you see? On this side, I wrote plus half of b squared. But over here, I'm not going to write it like that. Over here, I'm actually going to do the math. That's going to be 49 over 4. Because 7 over 2 squared is 49 over 4. You see?
Why?
Well, because I'm adding this number to both sides.
What's half of 7?
7 over 2. It's a fraction. It's 7 over 2.
Where's 3.5?
Yeah. You don't want to do 3.5. Because you don't want to square 3.5, right? Because I don't know what 35 squared is in my off the top of my head.
So that's
These come in multiple?
Well, hold on. Let's not even get that far yet. But do you see? The reason this is a perfect square because we took half of b, right, and we squared it.
Get an odd number?
Yep. And you see how on the board right there how I did it with the 11? Even though it was a whole number, it's still the same way because your next step is on this side over here. Your next step is you're going to factor this. So you're going to get x minus, and that number is what's going to be right here every single time forever and ever. Amen. That number with the sign goes there every time. That's why I write it like that.
In the parentheses?
Yep, the number in the parentheses, and that's why I wrote it with the sign, because half of -7, that's why it's a -7. And when you factor it, it's a negative. Alexa, do you see why I like doing it this way now? Even though you said it was going to confuse you? For an easy problem, yeah, it's confusing. But for when they get, like, numbers get ugly, it keeps things simple. Now over here, we do need to get a common denominator. Over here, the fractions, they always work out easy. You'll see. Like, they really do. So, would you guys agree that 3 is equal to 12 over 4?
Yes.
Yeah? So this is going to be -12 over 4. So I'm going to just go ahead and scratch it off. And I'm just going to write it over here. Because I don't want to rewrite a new line every single time, right? So it's a -12 over 4. So do you see how I did that?
In your head?
Well, wait, do you see how I wrote it though?
Yeah.
Because Alexa, do you see how I wrote it? So you're good with what I did? Okay.
12.
So then that's going to be 37, is that right? 49 minus 12, is that 37? Okay. Positive 37 over 4. This little calculation right here, even though it's a fraction, it's almost always going to be super easy. Because it's going to be a whole number and a fraction, and you're just going to convert just like we did right here. Okay, now we're going to do square root. So take the square root of both sides. We get x minus 7 over 2 equals, okay, now we can do the square root of 4. The square root of 4 is 2. Plus or minus the square root of 37 over 2. We have one step left. We have to solve for x. We have to add 7 over 2 to both sides. But do you see how they have the same denominator?
So you reduce the...
You simplify this perfect square. Yeah. You simplify the perfect square. And the reason you want to do that, because look, they have a common denominator. It works like this, like
so
almost
if you leave it at
all
4,
the
it's
time.
wrong, right?
Yeah, simplify it. But watch what happens watch what happens next. We're going to add that to both sides, so we're going to get 7 plus or minus the square root of 37. They both have the same denominator, so you can write it over the same fraction. And do you see how that is right here? That's the quadratic formula, but it's already simplified a little bit.
Cool.
K Shukis.
No, they should do
Oh, calmate.
Very chucky.
All right. You want to try one like that?
Yes.
Probably be the last one for the day. That's why, I will show you what happens when A equals something not 1, but I think that'd be too much for today. Yeah. Okay, so last one. Let's see. X squared minus 3x minus 10 equals 0. So solve that one by completing the square.